This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the March 4th Bladen County Board of Commissioners meeting. At this time, Reverend Adam Sell from Center Road Baptist Church will provide the invocation, and Adam Johnson will lead us in pledge of allegiance. Please stand.
God, we thank you for this time just to gather in these chambers as we ask that you watch over each and every one of us, guard our actions, our thoughts, our words, God, that each and every one would be pleasing to you. We thank you for the opportunity to go about the business that you've appointed these men and women to go over, and they always carry out the business in that way, God, as you would have it see fit, your will and not their own. We ask that you continue to watch over us and guide us and protect us and draw us close to you every day. In your Son, Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So Mr. Rodney Hester is on his way. He'll be a few minutes late. Before we approve the consent items, I wanted to AF wants to talk about a medical service fee schedule. And we can pull this off or we can leave it on there, but it's recommended by the EMS billing company, and it's due to the inflation factor to do that 2.6% increase. So if you need any explanation about that, we'll pull it off. If not, we'll leave it on there and approve it. That's the recommendation of David Howard, EMS director, and the billing company.
The rate is not included in this.
It is included in there.
It
It says 6% increase, recommended by the billing company. If you need more explanation, we can pull it. If not, we'll approve it like it is.
Make a motion.
Can we put it at the, have a
Okay.
question on it?
Got a question on it?
I do.
Okay, well, don't ask a question.
Yeah, on that, it's such as Medicare. My only question was, who could answer that was, if that was Medicare approved, because it appeared more than what Medicare approved. The cost is different. So, do the citizens have to pay that additional money or not? Once we accept that Medicare, it should be it, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just doing.
Sure.
That was no question, though.
It says, EMS, it's recommended fee schedule for EMS and billing company for the 2024 based on Medicare allowable rates for 2024.
It's different now.
What?
Cost is different. Unless I looked at it wrong.
6%. Did we get a second on the motion?
That's a question. Right?
Trying to get it cleared up, see if we're gonna leave it on there or not.
Those are the second one.
I don't know how to answer the question. I don't see it on that thing. Pretty good description of it, but
Make a substitute motion that we allow for it to be clarified next board meeting.
got a motion by Mr. Cameron to approve the agenda and consent items as is. Is there a second? Guys, for lack of second, entertain a motion to remove it.
I'd like to make a motion that we remove it.
Second. So we will remove. So we will remove item F, 2F, and we will have it on the agenda next meeting. He said it weren't important. I mean, it weren't, no rush. It's important, but it's no rush. So I'll entertain a motion,
Motion to approve consent item.
approve consent items with, 2F removed.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cogdill, second by Mr. Danny. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Special recognition, presentation of program, Heritage Proclamation. You want to come down forward? Up front. Here, Ben, sorry. Yep. You want to read your proclamation? Whereas this year marks the first annual observance of Welfare Fraud Awareness Month, which is set aside to raise awareness about the impact of welfare fraud upon our county and state, and celebrates the key roles that program integrity professionals play in maintaining the confidence in our public assistance programs. Whereas the Bladen County Program Integrity Unit is dedicated to the mission of reducing the incidence of fraud in our community. Whereas state, local, and federal governments, as well as local businesses, are frequently targeted for fraud. Instances of welfare fraud decrease confidence in the public assistance programs and undermines the benefits that these programs provide. Whereas fraud against Bladen County Public Assistance Program is a burden borne by citizens and businesses in the form of loss of resources to those who truly are in need, cost of investigation and prosecution, eventually incarceration of individuals who commit fraud. Whereas tips received from citizens and social service employees are consistently the greatest resource when fraud is detected. Increasing community awareness of welfare fraud and educating public assistance staff, as well as the communities about fraud prevention, detection, and reporting techniques is critical for reducing the incidence of welfare fraud against our government. Now, therefore, let it be that the Bladen County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim March 2024 as Welfare Fraud Awareness Month in Bladen County.
Thank you. I'd just like to say just a few things about welfare fraud. This is something that Martha Howe here to my left as the Program Integrity Supervisor has joined with me to make this a priority in our agency. They have been very successful for the last 4 to 5 years, and just last week we had someone who pled guilty to a large amount of fraud. So we're glad that we're able to have a month dedicated to welfare fraud so that we can bring a better awareness in our agency and more training to our staff for items and things that they can note and make those referrals on to us and to bring some of that money back to our county. So thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Item 4 is the individual delegation wishes to address the commissioner. Item 5 is a matter of commissioners. So the first A is consider approving an amended funding request amount of $100,000 for Cape River Bridge Lighting Project and executing the interlocal agreement with the town of Lisbon. So we approved the money for our part of the bridge lighting, but we needed to adjust it for the monthly bill. So that's what it's on the agenda for tonight, to add the monthly utility bill. What's the
That's not inclusive in the 100,000. That's a separate part. I'm sorry.
What is it, 6 for all parts for you?
I think that you're estimating 300. Yeah, may not be.
estimating $300 a month.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Cogdill, second by Mr. Danny. Any more discussion? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
So the next one, the town is requesting $68,000 for a matching grant. So they have been awarded the $275,271 federal grant, and it's critical to correct decades of neglected impact the transportation system of residents of Newtown and surrounding areas. So the town's got this grant, and they had the money budgeted, but had to use it for the airport and other things, so they don't have the matching $68,000, so they're requesting for us to, give them.
I make a motion to approve the
Wait a
60.
minute, wait a minute.
I second. I thought it was a good idea.
It's only on there for discussion.
That's right, we got discussion, that's just an update.
Because it's money.
So anybody got any questions, any discussion, anything to say about it?
This is a one-time cost, right? This is the match, this is that what we
Right.
understand, Chuck? This one-time match, right?
$68,000 to match that $200,000 grant.
Great idea. Great to get funds in too. I do that.
Okay? It'll be on the agenda for action next. Any commissioner have anything?
Mr. Chairman, I was just asking this, Lisa, what's the status of the White Oak Lodge application for ARPA fund?
The last information I had received from him was incomplete, and I have never heard anything back from him. I
Okay,
sent him 2 or 3 emails and never heard anything back.
okay, you sent them emails, what you need in order to go
Yes,
forward
sir.
with it, okay. All right. And the other one,
Wait a minute.
who builds the ramps in Bladen County?
They money.
State veterans.
Big group out of Kelly.
Mr. McCure.
Any other thing? Mr. Stockdale?
I talked with Commissioner Britt, and we was, wanting to see if we could get the board to do some type of, I don't know, it would be a proclamation of some type of agreement to enter into a Bladen County expungement clinic. Is that what we're talking about, Ray?
Mm-hmm.
This to be supportive of one, not to say it's funded, but this to be supportive of a expungement clinic. That's something that's going all over the state. And I got some resources I can give to it that's already been appropriated for that purpose. And I'm saying, can we just maybe do, I don't know how we need to do it, Mr. Chairman, but something to announce that we're going to institute that type of facility or that type of unit to help with expungement. I think she has just spoken with you, Mr. Johnson, right? Or Wes, with Wes about it. We got a young lady that wants to conduct that clinic. She said she could deal with it and come in and discuss with us how it would be handled.
Well, I think she needs to come to that discussion before we do a proclamation.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna say.
I just wanted to see so we can put something in place.
Or what Mr. Congress said, we have discussed it 2 or 3 times, and she's done this before, actually, and is doing it in some other counties. But, as Mr. Cogdell said, it is a important factor because you've got a lot of young people that's been impacted as far as something they did when they were younger and now they can't get a job opportunity, something they did when they were a minor. And it's still hanging, I think, Pender and New Hanover, and I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, multiple thousands the last 2 years. And, and a lot of these people will be eligible, from what I understand, for assistance through the government.
The legal aid and is a good institution.
I just have a question. You have an update on the ferry. You can tell it.
Yeah, man, we'll get you one. Or jot that down.
Okay.
Anything else?
Contract.
Huh?
I don't want to do
contract.
They put the
I
bids out.
understand, now, this is what I heard. I understand that Tracy Tribbett has a contract with the ferry.
Well, I know.
And again, that's just.
We didn't know
hearsay.
it wasn't published. I didn't see it published anywhere.
We'll get an update tomorrow for sure.
Thank you.
One last one is I've been getting a lot of calls. It's been ringing, I guess. I don't know what's going on with it, but people are calling in consistently to me about ditches. I know Kent was in here. He was talking about actual highway construction. What we want to do. DOT, we need to get him to come in here where we can talk ditches. People complain about the yards back and forth, water in front of the house. I know at one time, several years ago, he came in and they came in with a plan where they went through dealing with ditches. I'm saying, can we get him back in here to talk to us? How can we resolve that issue with ditches?
He was just here a 2 weeks
But
ago.
that was on highways.
Well, that's ditches.
But still, he didn't talk about this. He was talking about paving.
We'll see if Ken will come back and talk about ditches. Anything else? Item 6 is tree.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman Peterson, Vice Chairman Ellis, and Commissioners. Thank you for having me in. Just to do a quick introduction, my name is Cecilia Pierce. I am the Southern Regional Vice President with Trillium Health Resources, and we are your local management entity and managed care organization. So we cover the Medicaid recipients who have the most significant behavioral health, substance use, and developmental disability needs, and those folks who are uninsured or underinsured and need behavioral health care. So I just wanted to kind of come in this evening. It's been about a year since I was here doing this presentation, although I've seen some of you out and about at other community events and meetings. So just wanted to provide you with an update on what's happening with Trillium, some of the changes at the state level, some of the data on services that we've provided, and some of our special initiatives. So this is a quick overview of the number of folks that Trillium has served over the last year. So we've served a little over 43,000 individuals. The target populations that are listed here, mental health, substance use, and developmental disabilities, are primary. There are often overlap with mental health and substance use, or intellectual and developmental disabilities and substance use, but this will give you kind of a general idea of the breakdown of the folks that we're serving and what their needs are. And then the total that we have spent on services, so covering services through Medicaid or through state funding, is a little over $650 million this is Trillium's legacy 28-county catchment area. And I'll talk about why I'm using the word legacy and some of the changes that we've had in terms of our catchment area. So you've been hearing about Medicaid transformation from us for a while. The state, about 2 years ago, started the process with bringing in standard plan health plans, WellCare, United Healthcare, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and so on, to cover the Medicaid population who had mild to moderate behavioral health needs and were receiving Medicaid. So Trillium and those standard plans were brought in to offer whole person care, behavioral health care, and physical health care, so to align those systems together that were previously kind of working parallel. So Trillium and the other LME MCOs had applied for and were approved to become tailored plans, and we're going through a readiness process. Some of our LME partners across the state did not meet those readiness requirements, and so the launch of tailored plans for the most significant behavioral health needs was delayed. The last launch date was July 1st of 2022. So what the General Assembly did with their most recent budget is include in legislation some steps to stabilize the public health system, the LME MCO system that we're working towards becoming tailored plans. Part of that was to shift from 6 LME MCOs down to either 4 or 5, and that's mentioned in the legislation, to increase that minimum population up to 1.5 million, which would help reduce the risk. The larger the population you have, the less risk you have when you're handling the physical and behavioral health care for this really high needs population. And then that legislation also gave Secretary Kinsley the authority to kind of oversee the process for reducing the number of LME MCOs. It also did put into legislation a go-live date of July 1st of 2024 for tailored plans. So that is now expected to go live without any more delays. So the secretarial directive that Cody Hensley was authorized to issue essentially reduced the number of LME MCOs from 6 down to 4. So what that directive encompassed is the dissolution of Sandhills LME MCO. Sandhills staff and infrastructure became part of East Point LME, and then East Point and Trillium were directed to consolidate to one entity. So you can see the timeline here. You know, essentially, we were required to submit both a consolidation plan and a consolidation agreement. All of our plans submitted a consolidation plan to the state, and between mid-November and mid-December, we received some further instructions from the secretary on what he wanted to see in our consolidation agreement, and that really kind of kicked off discussions between Trillium and East Point to come to the consolidation agreement that was approved on December 15th of this year. That gave us about 45 days to onboard 18 counties into Trillium's catchment area. So one of the things that the secretary kind of agreed on or initiated as part of the consolidation agreement was, because the time frame was so short, while we were directed to do a rebranding of the organization, we needed to have a legacy organization to continue to operate. There was not time to rebrand and create a new organization. So Trillium became that legacy organization that would absorb those counties and the staff from East Point and Sandhills. Because the time frame was so short, really there were a couple things that we wanted to focus on in that 45 days. Making sure that members received the same care or greater from end of January to that February 1st date. So we really wanted this process to look seamless to the folks who were coming into Trillium's catchment area. One of the ways we did that was to make sure that we contracted or added additional contract elements for all the providers that were part of the legacy East Point and Sandhills regions. And we also, in that agreement, made sure that any staff from East Point and Sandhills who wanted to continue to work under the consolidated entity would have their same salary and their same benefits going forward. So we really wanted to maintain continuity of care for the members, doing that through our network and through continued staff support of the organization. So we were successful in doing that. We had a readiness process with the state where we checked in with them multiple times a week to provide updates. And on February 1st, all of our entities became Trillium as a 46 county LME MCO. That did include onboarding or updating contracts for over 1,000 providers. So our workload in that 45 days was really significant. As you all have been part of the process of coming on board with Trillium, you know it takes 3, 6, 9 months to kind of go through that process. We're talking 18 counties in 45 days. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but we wanted to really focus on the members and maintaining services for them. We are now a staff of around 1,600. So before Trillium, staff ranged from 500 to 600, depending on which month we were looking at. We're now a staff of 1,600. So we were able to retain the majority of staff. Some staff did decide to retire if they were close to retiring or leave, but that was a very minimal number. So we've been able to maintain operations throughout the catchment area, which we're really proud of. We're really focused on making Tailored Plan a success, and everyone seems to be excited to move in that direction. So as you all have gotten to know Trillium, because we were 28 counties, and we're now 46. What we've tried to do is, despite having a significant size, to try to keep things local, to try to make things personal, and to try to work with our counties and really treat you all as stakeholders that we have ongoing conversations and relationships with. We try to do that by creating regions with smaller groups of counties so that we can target in on individual county or regional issues, especially when counties work together. So what we have done with the consolidation, while we're 46 counties, we have moved from 3 regions with the legacy Trillium governance structure to 5 regions. So you can see some of the population numbers. The total population in Trillium's catchment is 3.1 million, and we have a little over 500,000 members now as part of our catchment area. And this map shows you the regions that we have established as part of that consolidation process. So the green up top is our northern region. It essentially has stayed the same with Warren County joining. What used to be our central region is now our north central region. What we've kind of split our southern region into what we're calling a south central region, which is that bright green kind of in the middle there, with the Beulahville office as our main hub. Bladen continues to be part of our southern region. Our southern region now encompasses New Hanover, Brunswick, Columbus, Bladen, Robeson, Scotland, Hoke, Moore, and Lee. So it does that kind of loop of west. And then furthest to the west, with most of the legacy Sandhills counties, is in orange there, with Guilford, Anson, Randolph, Montgomery. And there's one that I'm missing, but I'm still trying to remember all the counties that we've onboarded recently. So that's just a little bit of how we've tried to keep things local by reworking our regions a little bit. So again, with our governance structure, each region has a regional advisory board. Dr. Ellis and Dr. Molly Glenn are representatives from Bladen County, so we appreciate their involvement in Trillium and what we do. Each region also has a consumer and family advisory committee, and I really appreciate Tommy Thompson being part of that committee and providing us with lots of support and guidance. So you have local folks involved, kind of hearing what's happening with Trillium, providing input, and that gets brought up to our governing board. So with the consolidation, there were 11 new governing board members appointed through that agreement. So our governing board now consists of 22 members, 11 from Legacy Trillium and 11 from through the appointment process that happened with that consolidation. So we're still working through some of the consolidation work, but we're also very focused on tailored plan. The state has restarted our readiness process for that, and we feel like we're in a very good place. The things that they have already, a lot of the things they've already seen, we're not going to revisit. There are a few kind of system issues that they want to make sure that with our new catchment area and our new and increased size, that we're able to handle things like file transfers and those sorts of processes. So we'll be doing that with the state over the next couple months. But just a reminder in terms of the tailored plan, bringing that physical health network alongside our behavioral health network so that we can really work with our members as whole people. We know that if folks are experiencing physical health issues, it may often affect their mental health or create crisis in their lives and vice versa. So we want to be able to manage all of those things to try to optimize wellness for our members. So that includes partnering with Carolina Complete Health as our standard plan partner to kind of piggyback on their physical health network. We'll also be managing pharmacy benefits, and we'll be managing the non-emergency Medicaid transportation for folks who are tailored plan members. And you'll see reference there to some of the standard plans that went live in July of 2021. So the difference really between the benefits that are offered between tailored plans and standard plans, tailored plans offer enhanced benefits because of a high level of needs for our members. So looking beyond basic outpatient services, we're talking about things like psychosocial rehabilitation programs, SAOP and SACOT for folks who are experiencing substance use, residential and day programs for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. One key piece of tailored plan services has been care management or tailored care management. So that is ongoing review of a person's care plan with an integrated team that involves nurses, doctors, and care managers that have specialties in behavioral health. That care management, we're directed by the state to offer that in-house through our plan, but to also contract with providers to do that. So we've been growing the number of providers that are offering care management. There are certain populations that the state has asked us to maintain in terms of care management. So kids in DSS custody would receive care management through us. Individuals who are receiving transitions to community living support, those folks with severe and persistent mental illness who would otherwise qualify to live in an adult care home that we're supporting in the community, receive tailored care management from us because of that social program that they're in. One of the ways that we've tried to enhance our care management is to have some specialized care teams to focus on particular populations or systems where we need to have really close integration with those systems. One of which is working with folks who are reentering from jail or prison through our T-STAR program, which is Trillium Support Transition and Reentry. So we've been doing some in-reach, particularly into prisons, because this is a new team for us. We're going to expand into the reentering population from jails as we're requested to do that and as we expand this team, but really trying to make sure that when folks are released from jail or prison and need behavioral health or substance use services, that those are lined up and ready to go, because we really see folks struggling, especially when their Medicaid has ended, to reinitiate their Medicaid, get involved in services again, and try to maintain any progress that they've made in jail with recovery and taking care of their mental health. Our rapid access care coordination team is really focused on helping kids who are in the ED move out of the ED emergency department at the hospital as soon as possible. We know emergency departments are really feeling the crunch with folks coming in with behavioral health issues, so we try to work closely with our hospital staff to focus on that transition out of the hospital into care that's appropriate and needed. And then we have had in place a DSS, head of DSS engagement, whose name is Sean Kenny. And so he works with all of our DSS directors and staff to try to address complex cases that we share together. Under him, we are adding foster care management. So we're adding a team that will work with our DSS staff to provide a little bit more in-depth support around that, so that we can work together to make sure that kids are really in appropriate environments, getting the support they need, and hopefully keeping them in the community rather than moving them out to find residential options elsewhere. It helps to stabilize kids when they stay as close to their family supports and their school and those other social supports as possible. And then with care management, obviously we're trying to look at the whole person, and we have some population health initiatives to try to invest in folks really, improving their well-being, especially when they have chronic conditions, things like heart disease, diabetes, smoking cessation. So we have some special initiatives around population health that are focused on those. So wanted to provide a few updates in terms of local projects and things that would that you might have seen or that would impact individuals in Bladen County. So the first one we worked, while it's not located in Bladen County, it certainly has an impact on residents being able to access these services, we've worked really closely with New Hanover County on opening the Healing Place. So that's been open for about a year now, 200 beds for residential recovery support, along with a non-medical detox and a small emergency shelter. So that is a very highly utilized program. They have a curriculum that they have developed, and they have a lot of community involvement and support so that folks really feel integrated in the community while they're there. And it is peer run. So folks in Bladen County are utilizing the Healing Place and throughout our catchment area. Our training team has offered a series of summits focusing either on special populations or particular health issues. So we had a Latino Health Summit in Onslow County back in January, an African American Health Summit in Craven County, and we are working to host a Native American Health Summit in April in Robeson County. We also have been doing reentry simulations, and that again is part of our training department's effort. The reentry simulations are designed to build awareness around some of the struggles and barriers that people have when they reenter from jail or prison, and particularly when focused on the issues that our members face, not only around reintegrating, finding housing, finding employment, but how to do that if you have a developmental disability, or how to do that if you need to also initiate sobriety, which can be an extra barrier. So those are kind of immersive experiences, and the closest one we've had to this area so far is New Hanover County, but we plan to bring them throughout our catchment area so that can be a learning experience in all of our regions. The Family Solutions Grant was focused particularly on kids who may end up in foster care. There's a shortage of foster homes, and particularly therapeutic foster care. So providing some funding to Boys and Girls Home to increase recruitment for foster parents in the area to help keep folks local, and also to focus on kinship placements and supporting the opportunity for kids who need to be removed from their home to go and live with family or friends in a comfortable environment for them. And then our One Community team is kind of our outreach and education arm. And they have been really focused on just making sure that folks know who Trillium is, what we do, getting our name out there, trying to do 4 or 5 kind of tabling events here in the county and throughout our region per month. So that's the focus of our One Community team. Some things that are ongoing and upcoming: Chest Health. We started working with Chest Health, which is a recovery app to help support folks in their recovery process. It gives reminders to go to meetings. You include your recovery plan in the app, and there's an online support community piece of that. So that was, the state heard about that and actually is partnering with us to make this a statewide initiative. So we're excited about that. Back at Home North Carolina is federal and state funding that's coming in through Trillium for permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, and that's available. We are part of the balance of state process in applying for federal dollars and state dollars, which the funding is available to residents in Bladen County and throughout our catchment area for those 2 housing initiatives, and that's particularly focused on individuals who are homeless and need to be rehoused. We continue to try to help emergency services with naloxone distribution. So we directly distributed naloxone to EMS. We also provided a grant for them to purchase 100 naloxone kits, and we provided 30 kits to Bladen Community College, particularly to focus on our young folks and the folks who are kind of in that early transition age. And then Bladen will be part of the Healthy Opportunities pilot That is another state initiative that was delayed a little bit. It's scheduled to launch on May 1st of this year, and that provides additional funding and support around social health needs. So employment, housing, food access, personal safety. So standard plan members have been able to access those pilot services. Tailored plan members, they've delayed the launch of those pilot services for our population, but that will come online on May 1st. And then just to wrap it up, for the last full fiscal year, 22 and 23, Trillium served 834 individuals in Bladen County. 578 had a primary mental health diagnosis. 255 had a primary substance use diagnosis, and 135 had a primary intellectual and developmental disability. Those overlap because of co-occurring issues, but the total value of services spent in Bladen County was a little over $12 million. So I know that was a lot. I'm happy to take
Ms. Pierce, when you come in, I've always been able, we have a good conversation.
We do.
And about things going on. And I have been in the board of directors meeting with the state association. Good conversations. Since this transition has happened, it's been a discussion with a lot of the counties that y'all conglomerate have. It's the total amount of funding that the Crean has. I don't know if it's true or not. They say Crean controls now $4 billion. I don't know if that's right. But they say, in a sense, of $4 billion that they can provide service throughout their 46 county catchment.
So some of the initial estimates that I've heard, because we're still onboarding, is right now with just the behavioral health services that we're offering, we oversee a little over $1 billion. And then once tailored plan goes live, it will be closer to $2 billion.
They $2 billion out. So that's what I'm saying. Some of this has been unclear as to the amount. And then the other thing that when they urged it to me, I had one concern. And I want to kind of see, can you help us with this and make clear to all of us how this is going to happen. When they got a 22-member board out of 46 counties. Some counties got 2. Some counties got 0. And when they're sitting down, being on the board, you're looking at the funds. When you look at it, sitting in the meeting, all the funds are laid out in front of you. But when you're the ones that do not sit at that table for the 22, how will you make those funds available for this board to know what's going on? What method will you use so it'd be clarity as to how that would transition, that this board will know what's sitting on the table that's available for Bladen County?
So a couple of things with funding. So essentially 98% of our funding is based on services and people utilizing services. So there is not a whole lot of control that we have over that because it is based on folks going into an office, receiving a service, and that provider billing claims for us. So there are set benefit plans that we offer, so we don't have a whole lot of control over those services. It is with Medicaid savings, and if we end up with some of that, and the county maintenance of effort support that you all provide to us, that we have some flexibility. Some of that goes to special teams that we have, like our Neighborhood Connections team, that tries to support individuals who have social health needs. So, if someone needs some short-term funding to help stabilize their housing or pay a back bill, our team connects them to community resources, or we have some internal resources to offer towards that. So there are some special initiatives through Trillium that are covered through those county dollars, but primarily the funding is controlled by our benefit plans that we are offering through Medicaid and through state funds. Now, in terms of the feedback with our governance structure, so with the consolidation, 11 folks were appointed to our board. Typically, the way our governance structure works is that our regional boards appoint a commissioner, 2 non-commissioners, and our CFAC representative to the regional board up to the governing board. And so those folks are really the ones who are responsible for taking those local issues, bringing them forward to the governing board to try to get, make some changes if changes are needed, and also to bring back those decisions from the governing board level back to the regional board to inform our regional boards of what's happening if there are some significant financial decisions to be made. So there's feedback in and out of the governing board and the regional boards. So the appointments don't exactly line up with our structure, but we are hoping over time that it will line back up where our regional boards are appointing up to the governing board, and we still expect that communication will happen. That's the expectation of the representatives to our governing board. So if Commissioner Ellis said, at our regional board that, Bladen's concerned about one particular aspect of healthcare, he would bring that up. If it was a regional issue or an issue of great concern, it would go up to our governing board for some consideration and discussion, and we would work to address that. So that's how our issues get brought forth to the governing board and addressed and brought back to the regional board. Is that helpful?
I think that's it. But see, what some of the guys were really saying when they were sitting in the group talking, the bigger counties would have more directed in what's happening because they're sitting there with the funds. And we need to align as commissioners here with a big county to be maybe like a broker to get things done, or how that bylaws and governing principles flow, so that Bladen County wouldn't be saying, okay, we catch the scraps and everybody else gets well blessed, right? Because they're a bigger county with such a big conglomerate of counties put together.
So we just had a board orientation to try to help our governing board kind of understand that structure so that they know that they are representing their region when they are bringing things up to the governing board, and not just their individual county, but their regional representatives.
The way I understand it, we had 834 clients, customers, citizens for us. Well, the number's going to change if we have 2,000 people that need the service. That figure could easily go to 22 million. So I guess my part of the question wasn't understanding what Mr. Cogdell was saying. The money's there if we have the need. The bill's going to be paid.
Yeah, that's all I was going to say. I don't, there's not like a ceiling or a floor. It's all based on who needs the service.
We receive a per member per month allocation.
Yeah.
So our responsibility is to manage those funds so that folks get the needed services at the level of care that they expect, while kind of maintaining that overall solvency.
I guess I add to that, it's those additional funds that you save on the Medicaid is what that we're talking about. What happens to those funds? Who has to say on where those dollars will go?
So we get input from our governing board, and we propose new initiatives to help kind of work upstream with our populations to improve health overall. And so that is where our governing board would get input, and our regional board would learn about those initiatives as well and be able to provide input.
That's right, please. What programs do we have for homeless? Are they in this family solution for where?
So the back at home, So the back at home is really the federal and state funded homeless programs that are administered by our housing team. So if a Trillium member becomes homeless, they would get referred through our call center to our housing team to be screened for the back at home funds, and we would try to support them either with rapid rehousing if they had kind of low needs and just needed to get back on their feet, with some short-term support, or if someone needed more of a long-term affordable housing along with supportive services, they would get referred to that permanent supportive housing.
I'm too with that. Are the veterans, do you also serve them? Or do you allow the VA to just do that? Or how do we?
So the VA has separate funding initiatives that look like this, but are called different things. So in the VA world, it's HUD-VASH, and I'm forgetting the name of the rapid rehousing program, but there's a rapid rehousing program for veterans. If a veteran is a Trillium member and they prefer to work with us, we're going to work with them.
Otherwise, you can refer them out.
We can, and we are happy to. So we'll let our veterans know what resources are available, and then they would get the choice of what they want to access.
And adopted children, I was on the committee for state. One of the questions that we had was, how do you give for them to get service after age 18? So are they in that program now for next year? Did they to 25?
So our team would not necessarily, if they're not involved in foster care. So our teams are really focused on that foster care and DSS kind of in crisis population. Now, if DSS is working with a kid in that transition age and has concerns, we'll work with them. The rapid access care coordination or that foster care team is specifically going to work with those kids in foster care. But they would still, as long as they're Medicaid and Trillium eligible, they would receive care management, so they would still get support, maybe with some different resources. Yeah.
Just got a couple questions. You mentioned something about prisoner referrals.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do a sheriff here have documents where they can refer people to you? They complete the document and send it to you?
So we're just getting started with that process, but if there was someone who was being released from jail or prison and they wanted to try to get them connected to services, they should definitely call Trillium and we can get them connected with the right care team.
So the sheriff employee would call Trillium on behalf of the...
On behalf of the member, yeah.
Now, one other thing, public relations, how do you get your name out and your services out and your objectives to the citizens in Bladen? How are you doing that?
So through that one community team primarily, and also I am at community meetings. Dina Hamilton is our community liaison, and she also attends meetings regularly. So we try to be the face of Trillium with our stakeholders, and then one community does outreach just by setting up a table, handing out brochures, and some swag items. What's that? We have billboards. So we try different methods to get our name out there. We try to make sure that there are materials at health department, DSS. So if there's anything that we can do around that you think would be helpful for your folks to get our name out there, please let me know. We're happy to work with you on that.
Our citizens using your services, how does our percent of them compare to the other counties? Are we in line with the other counties as well, percent-wise?
So it's really based on the level. So about 8 or 10%. Let me be very direct in answering your question. I have not looked at the percentage of your population in comparison with the whole to see whether it's in line with other counties in terms of the number of folks who are tailored plan members. Around 10% of all Medicaid members are tailored plan members. They need that level of care through us versus through the standard plan. And so that's kind of standard across the board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? So I know, I sent a letter the other day. I know there's concern about these counties with two commissioners. And that was some of East Point's doing. I know that too. And I know that they're looking in to see if they can change that, or they will get one. But if you know someone that needs services, pick up the phone, call Trillium, you get them services, and the money's going to come to the person that needs the services. I mean, it's like DOT, you know. We don't have a whole lot of say in DOT roads and stuff because they get it off from Raleigh and Greensboro and Charlotte. That's just the way it is. But someone needs services, we're going to get them services. We know about it. I will.
Our hope, especially with that regional structure, is that every county gets the same number of appointees to the regional board, and then the regional board is going to appoint folks up to the governing board that will speak on behalf of the region. So we're hoping that once folks get familiar with our structure, things will line up to where every county, no matter how large or small, has an equal voice and an equal say in how services get administered when there are those decisions to be made.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Emergency Service, Joy Coleman, home water. Ready, finding?
Good evening, everybody. I'm here tonight with Logan, Ben, and Chris with LKC and McAdams. I'm going to give y'all the rundown from the stormwater study we had done after Hurricane Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. We are before you tonight to, well, let me real quick. So yeah, I'm Logan Parsons with LKC, Chris Stanley with McAdams. Y'all selected us as your team to do your comprehensive stormwater assessment, which actually covered, to be clear, it covered the municipalities, the participating municipalities within Bladen County. So we have a presentation we'll run for you tonight. I also brought a copy of the draft report, and we'll try to read it to you real quick so we can get through it in a couple hours here. Is that okay, Mr. Peterson? All right, the participating municipalities were Elizabethtown, Bladenboro, Clarkton, White Lake, Dublin, and Tar Heel. What we did was, we'll go through and talk about it more. This project was actually funded through NCOR, which is a division of the Department of Public Safety, or a function of them. And as Joey said, then it was actually, we'll cover that more, but it's all coming back to disaster recovery money that came out of Hurricane Matthew and Hurricanes Florence and Michael. So Hurricane Matthew, of course, was very impactful to all of southeastern and most of North Carolina and several other areas. 2016 is when it came through, dumped just a tremendous amount of rain in the area. Historical flooding damages, we'll cover that more on that kind of the more specific area, but that's what generated a lot of this funding and other funding towards areas like Bladen County to go after, get money, prepare for what do you do when storms like this come, and build resiliency to those areas. Hurricane Matthew and Florence, which was definitely an odd event that you had Matthew, which was such an impactful hurricane in 16, backed up by, Matthew and Florence coming in 2018, which hit even harder, right? You felt people that maybe had just recovered or not even recovered from Matthew, for the previous one that got impacted by Matthew, and then right after it was Florence. So definitely difficult times for the area. So here's a couple pictures. Some of these all of these are in the county, but you can just see the level of impact and the severity of it. You can see storm surges from Florence, some of the bullets there, 50 deaths, and an incredible amount of rain from Florence, 35. Florence was the one that just moved over us and just sat there and just dumped and dumped. 36 inches of rain in Elizabethtown, and just large amounts of roads and flooding and culverts washed out all over the place. So what this project entailed is it's a inventory of your assets. So started with this a lot of data collection, looking at old reports, old studies that were done, collecting data from each of the municipalities, coordinating closely with the boards and their staff that were designated, and especially the key staff that were around during the hurricanes and knew exactly where the water got, which roads flooded, and the impacts were. So a lot of conversations and meetings with them. So a lot of data collection. That we surveyed all the inlets and drainage structures within the communities, did assessments of those. We built maps and inventories of all the stormwater infrastructure within the municipalities. And then we took those maps and we started building models of kind of what we called hotspots or key areas that were prone to flooding. So first we had to do is create existing condition models, back those up, and validated them with pictures and documentation from videos and news reports of flood events that occurred. And then we started looking for alternatives and solutions for those areas and those hotspots, and try to improve the flooding or reduce the flooding in them. And which led us to generate several conceptual plans and layouts. And, if we try this, what does it do? If we try that? And what we ended up with was several capital improvements for each of the municipalities that we've documented in this report. Should be useful to them going forward. And then all of it summarized, like I said, in that stormwater assessment report. More pictures. These are specifically in and around Bladen and Elizabethtown. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who will talk about a lot of the modeling that we did.
Yeah, thanks, Logan. As Logan mentioned, I'm Chris Family with McAdams. We served in a support role to LKC for this project. We sort of specialize in hydrologic and hydraulic analyses and stormwater studies. That's kind of what we do. So our job on this project was really to kind of serve more as the modeler. We spent a lot of time meeting with town leadership of the different communities that participated, meeting with stakeholders, really getting a good idea of what happens when it rains, when these big rainfalls occur. Not just the big name storms and the tropical events, but also just some of these hard rains that happen during the summertime that you see more frequently. And so we learned a lot of good information by doing that, and really kind of getting, leveraging that institutional knowledge of folks who've been around here a long time and know what happens. It can help us validate what we're seeing in our models. And so we came at this with, a multi-model approach. We use pretty much, most of the traditional modeling softwares that you'll use when you do a big watershed study like this. We kind of approach this from a watershed perspective. But bottom line, we did some one-dimensional modeling, which is just, the traditional kind of riverine, straight down the stream models. We also did some two-dimensional modeling where we were able to take some of the terrain data, the lay of the land, kind of pull that into our models. That was helpful because a lot of these communities are, it's flat. We don't really know where the water goes. So that really helped us, especially in places like Bladen where we can see what is the water really doing when it overtops and it floods these areas out. So we spent a lot of time doing that. But as Logan mentioned, the goal was to kind of develop these individual CIP plans for each community. What we ended up doing, really, one of the major goals of the project was to bring awareness of what's going on with some of these flooding events. A lot of the communities that we worked in and worked with, and we've got Clarkton up here first, and this is one of them where we just didn't really have anything to start with. We worked with in a lot of communities where there are existing FEMA maps, there's regulated floodway and floodplain. We can take that information and we could use it right off the bat. Some of these communities didn't have that. Clarkton really has no FEMA mapping throughout town, and so we kind of had to really just build it from scratch. And so the result, one of the major results from this work was bringing an awareness of what does this look like when it actually rains. We know what it looks like when it happens to the folks that are impacted by it, but when you look at it on paper and you see a storm coming, you don't really know until it happens. You're sort of guessing. What this was able to allow us to do was to paint a better picture of what does this really look like in the future when you have another storm event like this. And so working in Clarkton, that was one of the first communities that we worked with. Of course, met with town personnel, town staff. We walked some of the hotspot areas. We learned about a lot of where the major problems were. With each of these communities, we looked for sort of some common themes. One of those was, the idea that there's some of these communities or some of these houses and neighborhoods are just built in low-lying areas that are just flood-prone, and there's just not really a practical solution to fixing it. We came up with alternatives, as Logan said. We looked at larger pipes, larger culverts, bridges, but at the end of the day, there's just a lot of these houses that are in bad locations, and it's not practical to spend millions and millions of dollars, to fix some of these solutions. And so we did, in some cases, look at property acquisition or, relocating folks out of the floodplain. And so, whereas before we didn't know where the floodplain was, so we had to start there and we had to establish that. So that was what we did in Clarkton. Moving on to the town of Tar Heel was another community we participated with. We walked this area with some of the town leadership. Obviously, Tar Heel is pretty small, so we were, relegated to just a couple of areas in town. With this, and with most of these communities, we pulled a lot of information such as aerial photos, historical photos to just help us validate what we were seeing. And it might be kind of hard to tell, but there's some aerial photos there showing some inundation and then our models beside it. And so what we were able to do is get pretty close to reflecting what actually goes on out there. And somewhere like Tar Heel that just lacks drainage infrastructure. Our solutions here were, to just add more pipes where you can, maybe put in some areas of detention, maybe look at, just upsizing some channels or something like that to get some extended holding. But it's get it off of private property and get it off of the residents. And so that was Tar Heel. Moving out to Dublin, I think Dublin was the first community that we actually started working with. They had a lot of really good information for us, some good videos and pictures. And so with Dublin, we walked this area. We actually did some two-dimensional modeling in the town of Dublin. We utilized a storm. I don't think it was a named storm. It was a November 2020 storm that caused a lot of flooding across town. And we used that to calibrate our models. With all of our modeling, we ran sort of the traditional storm events that we look at as engineers. But we also put in Hurricane Matthew. We put in Hurricane Florence. We actually also put in a couple of named storms. We can go and we can pull that rainfall data if we know what storm event, when it occurred and what caused all the issues. And so we pulled all of that and ran that as well. But Dublin, was another one where I think this one was kind of more of a traditional, pipe and culvert upgrade needed throughout town and sort of a system approach. And so that one, we went through a process of prioritizing and organizing projects, doing cost estimates for what it would take to fix it. But really, it's one where you would just start downstream and you would work your way up to fix the issues. And so we also looked at some offline detention with these projects. It's just difficult with something like detention because you got to have a lot of space to hold a lot of water. It just doesn't, it's hard to get it to be effective if you don't have just a really huge space to make that work. And we'll see that with Bladen in just a second. With White Lake, we spent not as much time with White Lake. We did meet with the town staff. We looked at a few areas. Of course, most everything drains into the lake. Some isolated areas of flooding throughout town, but most of the issues with White Lake was what the town considered on private property. So there wasn't as much with public infrastructure with this one that needed to be fixed. So we didn't get into as much detail with White Lake as we did the others because at the end of the day, we discovered that this was kind of more, private property fixes that would have to be done by private citizens and not necessarily the town leading that effort.
But wait a minute, back up.
Sure.
So what about all the wastewater and stormwater you talk about running into the lake, and that might be creating a problem to have with the water in the lake? Did y'all do anything around that, or?
We mapped what they identified as their town infrastructure, but when you really look at it, it's not a lot. You have a couple channels that come out and serve just a couple areas, and then everything else is in private developments. And you look at how close, like most of the area is the lake, right? And all around the lake it's kind of a bowl, but you don't extend out very far. So there's not a lot of runoff that comes from the developed areas right to the lake that influence.
And does it matter if it's private or for public, if it's creating a problem over there? One of our biggest tax bases in the county.
Right.
Yeah. All the wastewater and stormwater runs right into the lake.
Well, yeah,
they don't know it, but they kind of think.
But I think, well, they know it. So well, I don't say they know. The issue is how do you fix it now, right? And it's going to take. Yeah, it would take the town taking action on private owners to control what happens on their property, right? So you got to control. You got all these houses that are together. You've got to control the stormwater that goes across all these private developments and right to the lake. So it's a very complex issue with a lot of individual private owners.
So I was thinking that this was going to tell us that all what you just said, all this stormwater, everything coming off private property is going into the lake.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the things they're looking for, relief and how to fix the lake, how to do it. They think that's one of the problems they're having, is changing the color of the lake. They don't know for sure, but I think that.
I think as time goes by, they're determining there's less and less runoff into the lake. Just like you said, there's just not, it's not that impactful, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Like over the last 5 years, once the water quality's gotten concerning, nothing has changed. It's not like all of a sudden the last 5 years there's additional runoff. I think they kind of backed away from that and said that.
Since then, the lake has been low ever since. Had about 1 year of holding period. After that, it's down. I mean, from what I understand.
So I talked to Sean today, and it's a little different story than y'all presenting what he presented. That's the reason I was asking that, because I told him y'all were coming tonight. And one of the big concern is they think, because they've got to figure out a way to put rocks or something so they can get the water out of the lake and rotate it and stuff. And that's one of the concerns that I understood, and I could be wrong.
If they take any water out of the lake, we ain't gonna have a lake.
We got to figure some way to just to get the algae blooming and get the water moving.
Yeah.
What it's all made.
Yeah.
So that's the first question, after stormwater drains, when you look at
water getting in there, right?
the Elizabethtown area, you look at storm drains, and when you look at the housing development that's sitting in the sector, most cities have like the big covers that run everything underground. It runs into a big pipe, and everything takes out and kind of goes out to a cover to a certain point. Is that too expensive to look at undertaking that type of situation? Because you see so many houses now that the water just stands right in front of it. There's no storm drain runoff. It just stands right there. So when it floods, it has to flood. You can't go no place else to back up because there's no outlets for it to go. So is it something that, I know I talked with Dane with the town. That was one of his major concerns, was how you get this water off and all of this property when it rains.
And we looked at that, and I'll go through, I'll hit a couple more towns here. Our main focus, just to kind of address like the lake issue, we weren't really looking at a water quality issue with them. The discussion was really more focused around flooding issues and flooding in the right of way.
My questions was geared to, I thought this thing was going to have some problem solving.
It does.
Techniques to it.
It does.
And the lake, one of the problems at the lake is that's one of the problems I understand. But I ain't heard nothing that you tell me it's coming off private land, ain't nothing to do.
Well, I would say White Lake is probably the exception with the communities that we met. That discussion when we met with the town, it was really solely focused on infrastructure, pipes and culverts in the right of way, on streets, and there really was not a huge issue with those. When it comes to the lake itself, this study was not focused on treating or addressing water quality concerns with the lake.
I know what the focus is for, and I don't mean to insinuate that it's the water quality of the lake, but I was just asking about the stormwater and the wastewater. And that's what this study is supposed to be about. And where it's going and how you divert it or what you do, if that's an issue. That's what I was trying to understand.
I see you have that algae picture.
The yellow?
Is that, yeah.
That is actually floodplain. That's the floodplain.
Have y'all addressed that at all, or they have, or is it private again?
The floodplain that is what is regulated by the state. So everybody, you've got a regulated floodplain for FEMA maps area. That's what that's representing there. Yeah.
You know, I say this very respectful. When you're in a store downtown, you get everybody. There's a commission that comes in. The thing that concerns me of one of the issues that Mr. Peterson discussed, no one seems to want to discuss the aquifers that used to come into the lake, about 5 of them, right over where everything you saw, all the water. But then you got a pond very nearby that thousands of gallons of water is overflowing into the pond. But that's something nobody seems to want to discuss. Possibility of the aquifer got cut in the pond. And as a citizen and a commissioner and somebody very concerned about White Lake, as Mr. Peterson said, about the percentage of the tax coming, I think that there's some concern there that needs to be researched with some answers on that. And I think that would identify one of the major concerns about the water levels. And I say that with all respect to the towns of White Lake and their board and all. But, you know, sometimes you just got to jump in the middle of something and tackle it.
And let me keep going here. I've got a couple more towns I was just going to hit on. Bladenboro is probably where we spent the bulk of our time. Bladenboro, of course, is, you know, that's kind of the meeting point for several large flooding sources. And so with this one, you know, you have Bryant Swamp that runs right through the middle of town. We've got Lateral 7 Creek that comes from the south, also Wateree Creek that comes from the north. So this was one that was fairly complex to model. We spent some time, of course, walking throughout downtown, looking at all the different infrastructure that's out there. Discovered, you know, that it's, you know, not unlike a lot of older communities where, you know, it's just a mixed match of different things. A lot of metal pipe, a lot of older, you know, kind of just whatever they had, that's what they put in there. And so with Bladenboro, of course, the concern is downtown and how much flooding that you see downtown, which is, you know, obviously impacted a lot of businesses, a lot of residents as well. But with this one, you know, we spent a lot of time talking with some of the locals, local business owners. We I think actually walked this site with some of the public works staff from the town. Ultimately, we looked at a lot of different solutions here. This is one where, you know, we tried about everything to see what the impacts were. As, you know, as Logan mentioned earlier, we did a lot of sort of what if scenarios. So with Bladenboro, you know, we looked at, you know, upstream, upland storage, you know, holding some of that water back. We looked at things like, you know, levee systems to kind of capture that runoff and keep it from spilling out. We looked at, you know, upsizing culverts, upsizing bridges, of course. You've got the railroad that runs right through town. That obviously is something that really restricts flow in the downtown area. So we looked at some scenarios with that. We also looked at diverting water. If we could capture some of the water and send it downstream quicker to get it off from the downtown areas, that could be a solution as well. And so also with this one, we looked at analyzing costs as well. The cost to what do these things cost? These are all feasible solutions, but in terms of practicality and economics, you know, they got really expensive in a hurry. And so what can we do to look at it from that perspective? Does it make more sense to maybe relocate some things in town versus, you know, spend a lot of money on infrastructure? And so that all of that is part of what's included in our study, certainly for Bladenboro.
So do you know that water
when you get halfway to Bladenboro, all that water tries to go through Bladenboro. I'm out there off of 242, every bit of that water goes to Bladenboro.
Yeah, that's all the watery.
And that's, not watery, but all that comes through.
Down.
And then there's, when you get to South Carolina, there's no outlets down there for water to go.
Yeah. We looked at downstream conditions as well, for all of these. And so, you know, if it's one thing to just divert it or send it downstream quicker, but we want to make sure we're not creating an issue downstream, by trying to fix an issue upstream. And so, you know, that always is part of what we look at, what we do when we look at situations like this. I included this animation. It's not going to work for us, so we're going to skip over it.
So you talk about the railroad, but the DOT should take some responsibility for those bypasses and those roads that they're building through these towns and communities that probably exceeds what the railroad's doing.
Yeah.
Bladenboro's always been wet. Never until the DOT started putting bypasses and stuff in there, and sideways and stuff from these other communities.
And we identified
that DOT would take that water and take it down the bypass instead of trying to route it through Bladenboro.
Yeah.
And that would help down at Richardson and everywhere else that Miss Hester then comes, you know, we try to help them down there. That's the same problem there too, you know, because she sort of kind of blamed it on DOT.
Is that with Dr. White and the?
No, Sandra lives on down 242.
The Lion.
But the Hester lady lives right there at Richardson, down to 11.
Oh, okay.
Can't think of the first name.
How about the Lions? That's on your end.
We're trying to, but it ain't fixed. We're trying to get money to get that spring branch cleaned out.
Good.
Yeah. And we identified there was a lot of areas where it might be an NCDOT right of way or it may be DOT's responsibility. And so we tried to identify where those instances occurred, because, you know, of course, all of this can't be handled by just one entity. A lot of those structures are state-owned and state-maintained. So, last but not least, Elizabethtown. We looked at Elizabethtown. Most of the flooding issues associated with the town were in the downtown area. Primarily, we looked at, you know, sort of the main line system along King Street, but we looked at a lot of different historical, a lot of historical information to determine, you know, what was going on. I think with Elizabethtown, you know, again, a lot of older infrastructure, some of it not clearly defined or mapped. So we had to do some more kind of in-depth forensics. I think we did some CCTV inspections of pipes to figure out where things are tied in and what's going on. But, you know, a lot of street flooding, a lot of smaller, undersized infrastructure. Again, you know, this was an area that was pretty straightforward in terms of what we recommended for pipe upgrades and replacements. So that's kind of where we concluded with our study. One thing that we also did do with some of this work, I mentioned this earlier, but we did some stage damage analyses where we looked at stage, meaning water surface elevations, flood stage, how high up, you know, flood stage was on some of these areas, some of these homes and structures, estimating damages from that, so we could kind of do sort of a cost analysis to see, all right, what does this mean in terms of real cost data, and what would it make sense to do in some of these places rather than, you know, spend millions and millions of dollars on upgrading infrastructure. Could we do some property acquisition or move folks, get them out of these flood-prone areas? So that was part of what we did with this analysis as well. Some of the other options, you know, culvert replacement, levees. We did, you know, consider elevating structures, you know, doing flood proofing for some of these communities. There's some economical ways to, you know, flood proof structures that are flood prone. We really kind of put everything on the table for these communities and considered. And I think down the road, I mean, that's really something from this report that can be used in the future as well as thinking outside the box a little bit. You know, if it's not something that could necessarily be, you know, replaced or infrastructure upgraded, what are some other maybe more creative solutions we can look at to fix things. I mentioned, property acquisition. This is just an example of a project that we've done in the past. This is actually in Charlotte, where we did some property acquisition. We restored the floodplain. We did some channel benching, some extended detention, some little bit of offline stormwater storage. These are the types of solutions that may need to be considered for some of these communities where it's not practical to go in and put in a new bridge or culvert. This is actually just upstream of I-85 in Charlotte, so wasn't really anything we could do there. So this was a solution that was implemented some years ago, and it worked pretty well. So as I said, just considering keeping all things on the table.
So covering Chris did a good job explaining all of it. Each town has their own capital improvement plan where there's areas to fix and items to identify. So basically, you have project IDs, conditions that were applied to those capital. All these are items that went into them to develop them, right? You're considering the condition of it, you're considering the age of it, feasibility, constructability. Can you actually implement something? Cost is a big one. Is it cost feasible? Is it something that, this is a town, in most cases, town-owned infrastructure or state-owned infrastructure. So there's certainly opportunities for shared partnerships. If it's a DOT road, then it's not fair to the town to have to fix DOT's culvert, right? It's identified as a DOT issue, and you coordinate and prioritize with the state on getting that fixed to address where it can. That's an example. Stage damage analysis was a big portion of some of the areas, but really all this leads to is looking for other funding opportunities to start addressing some of these issues for each municipality. Bladen County, for this, but y'all took on the initiative to lead this effort for the municipalities. And then a lot of this will come back to the individual towns on kind of how, what they do with it, how they take it, and go after funding opportunities through. This one was CDBG, through NCOR. They had disaster recovery money that was left over from Matthew. Golden Leaf has a recurring pot that comes out. FEMA's got all kinds of applications. BRIC was one of their building resilient infrastructure, something community. I can't remember the acronym, but it was all flood related. USDA actually does do flood projects. Y'all are familiar with USDA from your water system over the years. Several other ones. The state has their own stormwater program now. I put the acronym up there. It's LASSI, it's Local Assistance for Stormwater Infrastructure Investments. And then the state has other programs. But basically, the next steps from here are consider this project, consider adopting or accepting the stormwater study, and what we do is need to coordinate with the funding agency, NCOR, on this project and what are the next steps might be. Community follow-ups.
Mr. Peters, and I know this isn't your fault, but just sharing concern and grief, I guess, and upset. 40 or 50 years ago, we didn't have these problems. And I say that for this reason. If you go through the Green Swamp, if you went through going from Whiteville, Columbus County, going to Charlotte, when I was a kid going through Nakana, you could fish in every ditch and canal and catch good fish. The state maintained it with money coming down from the federal government, this, that, and the other. And now you got 22-inch and 24-inch trees in these ditches, and they've gone over. The problem wasn't created locally, and locally now is expected to have to pay. And these billions that we're sending abroad, Mr. Peterson serves on the board representing our county all the way through South Carolina, Georgetown area and all. And the problem with our areas like Bladenboro and all, that's where that water's funneled to, and it can't get out. So if we fix the little area, maybe you're talking, and hopefully it would help, that water still got to get through. We get enough money every year, it's called a Band-Aid. we get to take the few trees that fall from a storm on the top. We need the money to do a total clean out. And then the state to come in and maintain with folks like used to keep them cleaned out. But now it's falling on rural areas such as ourselves where the money's not there. But then it's just going to continue to destroy our towns and cause them not to be able to run and operate a business. But it's a serious problem, but we give so many billions away that some of that money needs to stay here and fix what you're sitting talking about tonight. There's the problem. We're too generous outside of our own country.
Mr. Bullock. Is there anything available now to include other areas like White Oak, Council, Kelly, Tar Heel, East Acadia, places that you hadn't called, but anything available? Are you planning to go out and do some more work or what?
Yeah, you good.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, Tar Heel was in here, but I know there was a few communities that didn't participate.
Yeah, I don't have the history and I know why they weren't in there, but there are opportunities out there, the same opportunities that are the funding opportunities listed up there. Yeah, that will apply for individual studies for their system, and there's right now it's a good time. You know, there's still a lot of money out there from Matthew and Michael and Florence that.
Do they contact you guys to further this, or
Was it based on town councils and incorporated towns and stuff?
Yeah, that was, East Arcadia did not, I don't know what they did, because they were.
Okay, I just was wondering about the other areas that, in the county that were not included, appears were not included. Thank you.
I was just gonna say too, and I agree with what Ray said, 100%, but, it's, in '99, we had Floyd, and that was all the old timers. I was gonna say, you wanna know where the water went, ask the old people, because they know in these towns. They know exactly where it went and how it went and everything else, people that pay attention. Yeah, 99 was the 100-year flood, right? Y'all remember that? Of course you do. Then Matthew was a 100-year flood, and then turned right around like that Florence, and it changed. And I know you're next to me down there. It changed the composition of a lot of land around here, period, forever. And, people say, well, that was a dry timber tract. Well, it's not a dry timber tract anymore after that. So it's amazing. It's amazing, which I agree with you about the culverts and the canals and the ditches, but that's a major monkey wrench all the way around, but.
The one question, I was in a workshop, and there was some guys that were at the federal agency, I think, with environmental and drainage and that type of thing. And when they had a map that they could pull up the geographic locations of it, and they showed how much of it was flooded land, what they call wetland. And they were saying the remedy to it was a lot of it in Bladen County to get the water away from a lot of stuff was access to the river that is running down to the river. They say, you guys are not letting it go into your major flowing streams to get it out of Bladen. And when you look at East Acadia down there, they're flooding on that end all the time. And you look at some of the areas, like he said about Bladenburg, they flooding. He said, because you're not getting access, and I asked somebody, he said you could get federal money to assist with clearing those tracks out. He said you come in, your county municipality could request federal funds to come in and assist with that type of thing, putting in those things. That's something that's available in this, what he just talked. But these are three guys that work for the federal government that were sitting there with if you tell them where you stayed at, they can put it back on graph and show you. Tell you what wetland, what was happening with it.
Well, FEMA and USDA, they're both federal programs, and FEMA has had all kinds of different divisions and programs that they've implemented to help certain areas at a federal level. Even individuals, Rebuild NC actually is a lot of their money is going towards relocating, and you apply at an individual basis, but it goes to the person themselves. It has nothing to do with the local government or the entity they're within. The money is awarded directly to the property owner. So it's private. So.
And I would add to that, I mean, I mentioned this earlier with some of these communities, it's not even FEMA mapped. Like there's no mapped floodplain or regulated floodplain through there. to qualify for some of those grant programs or assistance, you have to be in a mapped area. And so I think one of the first steps for some of these communities might be to let's get it mapped. You know, let's use this information and get it to where it's actually now mapped and it's regulated through FEMA. That'll open up some doors, I think, to getting some of that, getting some help with some of that. We saw that in Clarkton where it was, there was nothing mapped, but you've got, well over a square mile of drainage area. That's a lot of drainage area running through, some small ditches and canals and railroad tracks and, things that are just really, causing the flooding. But, we had to sort of create that from scratch because it wasn't.
One last thing, when you go to Lumberton, about years ago, Lumberton came in and built that dike right down smack through the middle of the town. Built everything. They came and then built a mountain up and tied everything into it to get the grain out to the Lumber River. Something like that is not feasible to put in Bladenburg or different locations. That's not feasible.
It could be. I mean, we looked at a lot of different things that could be done. Yeah, we considered stuff like levees. I mean, it's all in there. Flood walls. Yeah, flood walls. We considered a lot of things like that.
I think we had a gentleman came in last year and he did a presentation, and I know he went to East Arcadia and talked to them, to the mayor, because that was the place that we actually needed was the map. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where he came because I talked to him about it. And that was when that mapping, maybe get that guy to come back because he wants to do a program. He was doing Pender County and some other.
Is that a recommendation in the ones that don't have maps?
We can do that?
That in the, yeah, we can, but I think don't Dean, soil and water.
He came with that guy.
Yeah,
That's what came with that.
We can get Dean.
Yeah, he came with it.
So where is that book gonna be? How are we gonna get access to that book?
So, what our plan is, the Bladen County will get several copies of the full book. To make it more manageable, we're actually going to separate it out into each town and provide copies to them, which gets it down to, about that per town. So you'll get hard copies of everything. Of course, there's a massive digital file that has, a lot of these are maps. There's just tons of maps and models and figures that show the flooding. So there'll be, Bladen County will get as many, y'all tell us how many you want, we'll print them. I think anyway, but then we'll get the town. There is a cost to it, but we'll figure out how many we can get. We don't. All right.
I mean, we put them in the office and check them out. We don't need no line. Just call.
Yeah. So, hopefully they'll bring a lot of good use to a lot of the municipalities that can take them and do more with them, find money to go after and get it while it's there.
Just give us a couple, and the towns a couple or whatever, and they can check them out also. Any other questions?
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. What year? 90.
You said you remember 99. Look at you.
I remember it. I'm older than him.
I remember it. I remember the big trees that came down.
I've never worked as hard as in my life as I did the week after Friends.
Juvenile crime prevention advisory board appointee.
With the retirement of Mr. Stevie Craig, my recommendation, Mr. Becky Tatum, she's dedicated and willing to serve if appointed.
Second by Mr. Gill. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed. Next month is this time planning and zoning and Southeast Economic Development. Calendar review. This is what we are. The Dublin Peanut Festival Fish Fries at Blue Mill starting at 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock Saturday. Health and Human Service meets at 5 o'clock on the 11th. Bladen Soil and Water District Board of Supervisors, Powell Mail Building at 8 o'clock. Substance Misuse Task Force at 2:00 at the Health Department. The 14th, the Mercy House, first annual spring banquet, that's at the venue, starting at 6:30. 15th, 16th, and 17th is the Southern Farm Days, Boys and Girls Home at Lake Walkamore. And also on the 16th is Blood Drive, 9 to 2:00 in the fire department. We meet the 18th at 6:30. 23rd is the Cancer Survivor Annual Gala Dinner at Littlestown Presbyterian Church, starting at 3:00. The 29th, office is closed for Good Friday. The Bladen County Vietnam War Veterans Day, located to be coming. So there's gonna be a ceremony that day. Potentially.
They think it's gonna be at least.
Yeah, more to come on the 29th about the Vietnam War Veterans Day. April, Monday, the 8:00 prayer service, right here in the Commissioners Room. 6:30, we meet as Commissioners. Tuesday is Bladen County Storm School and Key Leaders Update, Bladen County Emergency Service. Is that where Brad is gonna do the interviews? What is this?
What's that one?
What is the Tuesday say? Storm School and Key Leader Update, Bladen County Emergencies.
It's a lot of stuff.
There may be something attached to it.
Okay, more to come on that. I'll find out for sure between now and April. Spring fling and Blamer, 5 o'clock to 10:00, Saturday, April 6th.
6 to 10.
It's 5 to 10. April 8th, Health and Human Service. April the 9th is Substance Abuse at 2:00. Dig Day Weekend Fundraiser, Harmony Hall, April the 12th. I guess that's all day. More to come. 13th, it continues, and Blue Mill Wine Run 5K is from 10 to 11:30 on April 13th. 14th, still Dig Day. 15th is Commissioners meeting. Anything else to add or correct?
Daylight saving time, it ends when,
Weekend.
10.
This
The 10th.
This weekend, daylight saving time.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sunday.
Let's spring forward.
Daylight for sure.
Individuals with delegation wish to address commissioners. Matters of interest to commissioners. I entertain a motion to go into closed session according to NCG 133-3, 1011, NCG 143-3.
This conference will now be recorded.
Anything else on with you? I ain't got nothing.
I hope not.
No. Motion to close.
Thank you. Good night, yes.
Thank y'all.